Next, we're going to move on to DIDs, and DIDs are nice. If you saw on the hunt group screen, we can assign DIDs to a hunt group or to pretty much anything in the system. You know, a voicemail box, an auto attendant, users. Obviously, probably a lot of you have users that have DIDs on them. Work groups, hunt groups, enterprise contact center queues. Some people will do a direct a DID for their voicemail box system, so people can check their voicemail remotely if they want to be able to call into a phone number and listen, you know, log into their mailbox and check their messages. You know, some users will use that. A couple other nice features of DIDs is failover capabilities. So you know, with your telephone company, if you have two PRIs or two different, you know, SIP, you can use the carrier to failover DIDs from one service to the other. So they can either do call forwards if it's to different carriers, or if it's the same carrier, like at two different locations, they can just move the DIDs from one location to the other, so that if we do lose dial tone at one location, all of our DIDs can be set up at another location for failover capability, so users still take their phone calls to their desks, and more importantly, all of your published numbers can fail over to a different, you know, trunk group and still allow them to, you know, your callers should be, you know, answered by your employees, regardless of, you know, if you had a dial tone outage at one of your two locations. That's probably the biggest reason customers go to, you know, telephone services that support DID, is for redundancy capabilities. Another reason a lot of people use the DID capabilities is for caller ID, is using PRIs and SIP that support DIDs, you can do custom caller ID. So by default, if a user has a DID, that's their caller ID. But some people don't want their DID going out as their caller ID. If their sales reps may, you know, maybe they do, or maybe they want an 800 number for your office to be set as their caller ID. So you have custom caller ID options when you're using, you know, technologies and telephone carriers that support DIDs. Another big thing they're used for is marketing campaigns. If you want to know is, okay, we're spending, you know, X amount of money on a marketing campaign, we might want to know is how many calls is that marketing campaign generating. So if you pick a DID that hasn't been used before, or order a new one, and you set it up and use it on your marketing campaign, we can then allow us to run reports on that. We can look at the, you know, the call volume in a day, in a week, or a month, as far as how many people are calling into that, and then make a decision for your business. Okay, was this marketing campaign a success? Should we invest more money into it because it's generating enough calls? So that's a very big use for dedicated DIDs in the system. The other nice thing we can use is we can use our ShoreTel system directory to look at what DIDs are assigned to what users, and it's even exportable to Excel if it was something you needed to. We can sort by DID, we can sort by user, and we can see the DIDs assigned. So if you're looking to see what DID is assigned to a particular extension, you can simply, you know, look at your system directory inside your communicator client or in your Shoreware director, and you can see, you know, the DIDs that are assigned to the different extensions. So a big thing we get asked a lot is, you know, how do we add new DID ranges? If we order new DIDs because we ran out, or we just want to add some more for marketing purposes, a lot of time the DIDs were added when your system was installed. So how do we add them? So inside your Shoreware directory, you're going to go to trunks, and you're going to go to trunk groups. Then you're going to select the PRI or SIP trunk group that you want to add your DIDs to. You can see here in the trunk group, I selected a trunk group called BroadVox, which is, you know, one of our SIP services, and you can see that in here under inbound it says number of digits from CO, so 10. So what that tells you there is how many digits of your telephone number is the carrier sending us. And this is important to know when we go to add in DIDs, is if it says 10, we're going to use the full 10-digit phone number of that DID. If it were to say 4, we're only going to use the last 4 digits of the telephone number, you know, to put into the system. And then you'll see right below that, we have the DNIS, which we'll talk about next, but then we have the Edit DID Range. We simply click that Edit DID Range button to get a separate window showing us all of the DIDs that are assignable on that, you know, SIP or PRI service. And this is where we would look at the current DIDs that are built in the system and add additional DIDs. So as you can see on the the bottom half of that picture, we have I put 3 different phone numbers in here with just one number in each. If we bought a whole bunch of sequential DIDs, instead of that 1 on the right where it says number of phone numbers, you would see a 10 or a 100 or a 20. How many ever DIDs sequentially you bought, you change that number to the number of sequential DIDs. So if I wanted to add a new one, in the blank box on the bottom, I will put the 10-digit phone number. In the second box, put the number of phone numbers that I bought sequentially, hit the add this record, and hit the save button on the top of that page. And that would make that DID range available immediately to assign to users, to auto attendants, to work groups, any of the different entities that we'd want to assign that to. While we're on on that screen adding DIDs, a lot of people ask is, how do we know what DIDs have been assigned of these DIDs that are in this range? So ShoreTel puts a little link in the bottom of that page that says View DID Digit Map, and it really just takes us to a screen where it lists all of the assigned DIDs from that list. It won't show you the ones that are unassigned, so that's how you gotta know what the ranges are or write them down, so that when you look at that list of assigned numbers, you know which ones are available that could be used for future employees or future marketing campaigns. So as you can see here, I have 2 of my 3 DIDs I currently have assigned, and if you notice, those are just fake phone numbers. But you can see that I assigned one to the sample hunt group and one to the sample work group. And the nice thing here, as you can see, is as you get more and more, if you have a lot of sequential DIDs, you can just look down the sequential list as they're counting up from 12, 13, 14, and look for gaps in the sequential counting, and that tells you, oh, this that DID is available, or there's a group of a few DIDs available that I can use for future employees. So that's a nice way to just look at which ones are in use. The other option you can use is, showed on the previous screen, is the system directory. If you open up your system directory in Shoreware Director, sort by DID, you can see all the DIDs pretty much that are assigned here inside the system directory. The nice thing there is that, like I said, that's exportable to Excel. So it gives you a second option as far as ways you can look at DIDs in use and figure out which ones you can use for future employees.